When should you sell your property? People are speculating that the market has hit its peak and it's time to sell. Now, my sentiment is a little bit different around when you should sell a property. So in this video, I'm going to break down when I exactly think you should sell either your own home or your investment and why you should make that decision. Now, of course, it's up to you at the end of the day, but hopefully I provide some valuable insight. So like and subscribe and let's dive into it. Now, the quick answer for me is I never want to sell my properties if I can avoid it. You know, if you've got the options to hold on to property is a long-term investing game. You really want to hold as long as you can, unless you've got a property that has some issues. So the first key factor I wanted to point out was the entry and exit costs of buying an investment property or buying your principal place of residence. As you can see, the entry costs to a property can be up towards 6% of the purchase price. So if you're buying $1 million home, $60,000 can almost go to stamp duty, to legals, to your buyer's agent, to building and pest inspectors. All of those professionals have to be paid, as well as the government, for you to actually enter into the property market. Now, what that means is it makes it hard for you to get in and out of property. The exit costs as well, when you're paying sales agents and you're paying other fees to exit out of your property, you know, mortgage fees, you could look to pay up towards 3%. Now, on $1 million purchase, that's $90,000 to enter and exit the market in the same period of time. This is why I don't like flipping properties. If you have to pay 6% to get into a $500,000 home, and then you've got to pay 3% to exit that deal at the end of the day, that's chewing into your equity, that's chewing into your potential net worth and capital base that you can control. So ideally, you want to hold property for at least 7 years, if not forever. I'd like to hold property for the long term, for the rest of your life. You're looking to build a portfolio that is, at least a 10, 20, 30 year time frame. Now, if you are an owner occupier, I wanted to point out the 6-year rule and how you might be able to create some efficiencies when you're exiting a property purchase. You can potentially use this to your advantage and run it multiple times. So what happens in the 6-year rule is you treat your former home as your main residence and it becomes capital gains tax exempt, even if you no longer live in it. Now, the way you can essentially do this is for up to 6 years, if you use the property to produce income such as rent, you're allowed to apply this 6-year rule, or indefinitely if you don't produce income from this property. So you might buy your own home, you might live in it, and then you decide for whatever reason that you have to move for work or life or family choices for schooling, for example, and you're required to move out of your main residence. Say you need to move from Brisbane to Sydney, and the reason is you are moving for your work. So you leave your principal place in Brisbane, you rent in Sydney, and you don't buy another principal place of residence. After 5 or 6 years, you're able to still sell that Brisbane property, even if you've been renting it out, as a capital gains tax-free property. If the property's made $100,000, $200,000, $300,000 gain, you won't have to pay capital gains tax on that property if it was your main residence and you didn't purchase another main residence and you rented that property out to produce rental income. Of course, speak to your tax accountant about your specific situation, but the 6-year rule can be a great way for people to leverage their wealth, live where they want by rent vesting, and potentially make capital gains tax-free gains when they sell a property. Personally, I don't have any desire to use the 6-year rule in my current situation. For Emily and I, we do want to live and own our own home, and we consider it part of our property portfolio. We had originally thought about rent vesting for a long period of time, so this would work a lot better for someone who was planning on rent vesting, who moved into a property for say 12 months initially, and then decided to move out again and rent vest for a period of time, and then eventually sell that property. So there are some specific situations this might work, but it doesn't apply to everyone. Now, this comes to the core of why you might want to sell your property. And in my opinion, it is if you own a lemon. Now, the property market has been booming over the last 6 to 12 to 18 months. So it's a really good time to get rid of your lemon if you own one. Now, what things do I consider a lemon in the property investing space? And that could be main roads. The reason I've got main roads on this list is the noise pollution. If you're out your front door or you've got windows open, you've got breeze coming into your home, and you can hear main road noise, that is going to be a big detractor from other people wanting to live and buy that property. And we know that you want the most amount of people to potentially buy your property down the track. which drives demand and potentially drives property price growth. The other key factor here is you're not able to walk outside, use the main road space as community and family space. You know, kids playing cricket with other kids in the street, that's not going to be able to happen if you live on a main road. So those couple of factors really make a main road property purchase a lemon for me. Some other factors to consider why you might want to sell your property is if the property has structural damage. Now this is going to be difficult because you're really selling a property that needs work, and this is likely to be picked up in the building and pest inspection that potential buyers use when they're looking to buy that property. But if you want, to get rid of that property that's causing you issues, you want to get rid of those headaches, it might be a good time to sell that property while the market's hot. The next one on my list is if you're in an area with excess housing supply. Some quick examples could be Ripley on Brisbane's west, or Park Ridge on Brisbane's south, or Ormo closer to the Gold Coast. These areas are new housing estates. They're where land developers are purchasing space and developing land, cutting, couple hundred blocks at a time and releasing those stages to the market. As developers do this, they create a large amount of supply in these suburbs, and that means your property is not necessarily going to see the demand that we would like over the short, mid, and long term. Maybe I'll be looking to exit a property if it wasn't an area that had that excess housing supply. If you had a property that you were struggling with tenants, you're struggling with maintenance, and they continue to potentially leave the property in disrepair, and the cash flows weren't making sense because the property was in a lower socioeconomic area, so the cash flows and potential capital growth of that property just didn't add up, then you may want to exit out of that property to go and use your money and buy another property elsewhere. The last reason I might want to exit out of a property is if there's not enough value add potential in that property for me to continue to grow my portfolio. This leads me into my last slide, which is, can I roll my gains, or can I find other opportunities for me to exit one property and roll those profits and roll that cash or that available debt into a better property purchase? So opportunity cost is something that you need to really consider here. Can you obtain superior gains elsewhere if your current property portfolio, or you have an underperforming property within your portfolio? You might be able to roll those gains into emerging markets which are seeing short-term and mid-term growth, and that will allow you to potentially leverage and buy another investment property if you've got the available funds to do so. You might want to also exit a bad location that might be stagnant or not seeing any growth in the short to mid-term. And you also might want to roll your gains and exit a bad property or an underperforming property into a better location because you want to diversify. You might have your properties concentrated in one geographic location, so it might make sense for you to sell the worst performing property in that location and spend your money and diversify into another state or into another city to potentially get access to gains and growth and diversify your portfolio. So that might make sense for you. I guess my approach to selling a property is very analytical, it's very accountant-like, and it might not be suitable for everyone's situation. But for me, I'd only really want to exit a property purchase if I'd made a really bad choice in terms of that actual purchase in the first place, or the property was underperforming and I could roll my gains and roll my cash flow into a better location and a better property purchase. Emotions do come into play here, so if it's your own home or you're emotionally tied to the property for whatever reason, for family ties or work decisions or lifestyle choices, then that could play into the weighting of your choices. Buying a property is a big deal. It's one of the most expensive transactions you're going to go through in your entire life. So it's really important to consider all aspects, both analytical and emotional, when you're making the decision to potentially sell a property. If you are looking to buy a property, then I run a buyer's agency in the Brisbane market called Purpose Property. Reach out to me on my website at purposeproperty.com.au if you're looking to book in a free strategy session, and we help people buy in the Brisbane market 30 kilometres north, 30 kilometres south, and on Brisbane's Bayside to find a deal that meets you and your situation. Otherwise, drop a like on this video, subscribe to the YouTube channel, and click this video over here for all things real estate renovating and financial freedom. I'll see you in the next one. Peace.